You walk into a casino and you're offered to bet on a coin flip. The coin has a 55% chance of landing on heads and a 45% chance of landing on tails. Obviously, this is a game you'd probably want to play. The question then becomes, how much of your money do you risk on each flip? All of it? Half of it? 10%? Good afternoon, my name is Frederick Mayer, and the answer lies in a 68-year-old idea known as the Kelly Criterion, a rule used by gamblers and investors alike to maximize their long-run growth while limiting their chances of bankruptcy. I'll break this down into 3 parts. First, we will talk about the history and intuition behind the Kelly Criterion. We'll then look at the formula and apply it to an example. And we'll finish up by looking at what industries use the Kelly Criterion and some of its critiques. So where does this idea come from? According to John L. Kelly Jr.'s 1956 paper titled A New Interpretation of Information Rates, Kelly, a young physicist at Bell Labs, was studying Shannon Claude's new information theory. Essentially, Kelly was studying how to transmit the most amount of data through a noisy phone line. What does this have to do with gambling? Well, Kelly noticed that gamblers also face the same noise in the form of wins and losses. And by framing money as the data he wanted to transmit through the noise, the wins and losses, Kelly derived a formula that maximized the long-run growth of said money. Intuitively, Kelly proved that the best way to look at repeated betting is not by trying to maximize how much money you're going to make on the next bet, but rather to try and maximize the long-run growth rate of your bankroll. Put plainly, for each situation, there is a single optimal percent that you should be risking on each bet to optimize how much money you'll have after many, many bets. And this makes sense, as Luis Rotondo and Edward Thorpe pointed out in their paper titled The Kelly Criterion and the Stock Market. Bet too little, and while you might be playing it safe, you're missing out on potentially a lot of money. However, bet too big, and your chances of going bankrupt skyrocket. So what is this formula? How do we find it? Well, while there are many variations of the Kelly Criterion formula, each used for different situations, we will look at the most common one used for what's called binary situations. Situations where you either stand to win a multiple of your bet or you stand to lose your bet entirely. This is the formula. It reads F prime, which is the percent of money that you should risk on each bet, is equal to P, the percent chance you have to win, minus Q, the percent chance you have to lose, divided by B, the multiple of what you stand to win. What is B? What is the multiple of what you stand to win? What does it mean? It means that if you were to bet $10 and you stood to win $10, well, that's 1 times your money, the multiple would be 1. However, if you bet $10 and you stood to win $20, that's 2 times your money, and the multiple would be 2. Okay, let's apply this to the initial coin flip hypothetical. We would see, assuming we bet on heads, of course, that we have a 55% chance of winning minus a 45% chance of losing divided by 1. Which would simplify to 55% minus 45%. Thus, the Kelly criteria would recommend or tell us that to optimize our chances of having a lot of money in after many flips, we should be betting 10% each on each flip. Meaning that regardless of if we are on the first flip or the 100th flip, regardless of if we have $1 million or if we have $25, we should be betting 10% each time. So where is this used? Well, the Kelly Criterion has found its way into many different industries, ranging from technology to agriculture to even music. Nevertheless, it is still most commonly found in the investing and gambling industries. And it does have some critiques as well, namely that in the short term, the Kelly Criterion can be quite risky. And also, in the real world, it's often very tough to tell or estimate what your odds of winning actually are. Unfortunately, being off by just a couple percent can mean you're taking on much more risk than you intend to. However, Nicholas Yoder, in his 2021 article titled The Kelly Criterion, pointed out that oftentimes bettors and investors will bet what's called half Kelly or maybe 3/4 Kelly, meaning that if the Kelly Criterion recommends they bet 10% of their bankroll, they will instead only do 7.5% or maybe even 5%. They do this to limit their risk, especially in the short term. Similarly, if an investor thinks that maybe they have a 60% chance of winning, they might only use 55% or 53% when they calculate the Kelly Criterion. They do this to give themselves some wiggle room in case their initial estimate may have been off. In conclusion, we looked at where the Kelly Criterion came from and the intuition behind it. We then talked about what the formula is, and we applied it to an example, and then we finished off by looking at what industries use the Kelly criterion and what are some of its critiques. So I hope next time you're faced with a favorable bet, you remember math says to bet bold, but not to bet all.